The crook professor stutters and quickly announces the winner. He loudly declares Russel Raymond as the winner. Due to the odd turn of events, the professor slowly walks towards him. He awkwardly commends Russel and tells him he can leave, but Russel says that it's not over yet. When the professor asks him what he means, our boy reminds him of the class rules. According to the class rules, unless a victor surrenders, they should be allowed to call upon the next opponent. Anton's friends exclaim in shock because they realize that they're up next to get their behinds whooped. Russel promptly points at one of them and tells him that he's next. The system suddenly brings up another notification that informs him his new mission is to win the next magic duel, with rewards of 2 lowest grade mana stones and additional rewards for consecutive wins. Russel looks at the boy and he tells him to come to the fighting circle. After the game, Professor Hubert mutters to himself that our boy won 14 duels in a row. Considering the game, he reasons that Russel has great insight. He seems proud that he was able to recognize how much potential Russel had a long time ago. However, the professor starts to wonder how he was able to grow so quickly. He recalls all his moves on the field. Meanwhile, Russel receives a notification that he's completed his mission, and a compartment has been unlocked as a reward. The system notifies him that all his rewards will automatically be put in the compartment from now on. He also gets a series of mana stones as rewards for each fight he won. There seems to also be an unknown thing in the compartment, which the system gave him as a reward. Russel glances over at the notification about the unknown thing and wonders what it could be. He summons the compartment to find out. Our boy reaches into it and checks around. When he brings it out, it turns out to be some sort of map where X marks the spot. A notification pops up again with a new mission where he has to go to the location on the map and complete the mission assigned there. The system notifies him that some lights will guide his way when he approaches the location. The reward for the mission is something unknown, as well as 5 intermediate grade mana stones. The system issues a warning that it's best to try this mission after he has reached the 3rd circle. Russel is shocked when he reads that he'd have to get to the 3rd circle. He thinks about the 3rd circle, and he remembers that he's tried multiple times in his past life, but has never managed to get to that level. Another issue is that he doesn't know where this mystery place is, and he can't seem to be able to tell from the map. He quickly goes to the professor's library and hopes to find something that will hint at where the place is. He drops a series of books on the table and hopes to find a clue in one of them. The first one he finds is called Endymion Kingdom's Outer Territories, and he eagerly flips through it. There's no luck with that one, so he checks the next one. He doesn't find it, so he checks the next one. That one too doesn't have any information, so he checks another one but doesn't find it. After checking dozens of books, he groans in frustration upon realizing that none of the places in these books match the location he's looking for. He curses in frustration as he leaves the library and realizes that he's wasted too much time. He decides it would be better if he just focuses on reaching the 3rd circle first. When he goes through the hallway, several of the students cower in fear after watching his display in the stadium. Russel thinks to himself that he's managed to escape resentment and bullying. The only issue is that he's still a loner. While he's thinking, he hears someone call out to him from behind. He looks back, and it turns out to be Professor Hubert, who warmly asks him if he can come see him in his office. Russel cheerfully accepts to come see him. When they get to the office, Professor Hubert remarks that it's almost summer break. He pours them both some tea and asks Russel if he has any plans for the break. Russel tells him that he doesn't have any plans yet. Upon hearing that, Professor Hubert asks him if he would like to work with him on a research project, and this shocks him. The professor mentions that depending on how he performs, he can even get to have his name right after his as the author. Russel picks up the research paper and looks at the image on it, and he recognizes the place. The professor asks him what he's thinking about when he notices the surprise on his face. Russel promptly apologizes and tells Professor Hubert that he actually has plans for the summer. The professor looks at him puzzled, wondering why he had just said he didn't have any plans. Russel hands him the book and tells him he plans to go to the place drawn in front of it. He also hands him the map that he got. Professor Hubert looks at the place on his map and recognizes the place as Maldiva. A while later, when summer break arrives, Russel begins his journey to Maldiva. He sits in the back of a coach as he enjoys the view from the window. Later, Russel summons the compartment again. He picks a mana stone from the compartment and tosses it in his mouth. He tells himself that this will fill up his stomach for the journey ahead. He says to himself that he'll reach the 3rd circle before he reaches Maldiva. Meanwhile, the professor thinks about the strangeness of Russel's trip. The reason it seems strange is because someone else is also going to Maldiva. He believes Daria, his teacher, must be in Maldiva right now, and it may be a good thing that Russel is headed there. Meanwhile, by the Endymion Maldiva Sea, Daria gets a suntan by the beach and enjoys her vacation. She says within herself that the place may be her hometown, but it's always beautiful in her eyes. She enjoys a drink and wonders how long it has been since her last break. She realizes she's been busy protecting the Empire, making magic research presentations, and even developing her students. The master recalls a time when she was addressing her student. She mentions the numbers 9, 6, and 3 to them. She creates some fire in her hands and explains that these 3 numbers hold special meaning to mages. The kids are astounded by the depth of her skill, and they listen to her closely. Daria teaches them that the 3 numbers signify the end as a person who is already walking the path of 9th circle magic. It signifies the completion of a 6th circle for the mage that's yet to get there, and the suffering they'll go through to become a grand mage. The 3rd circle signifies a different thing. It signifies the start of a person being alone as a mage. Daria thinks about how it feels to be alone as a mage. Suddenly she recalls her meeting with Russel and wonders if the child is doing okay. She continues thinking about how she saw him reading an advanced magic book. Meanwhile, the coach that Russel is in finally reaches Maldiva, and the rider informs him they've reached their destination. The coach rider waits for a while and notices that our guy isn't coming down. When he comes to the back to check out his passenger, he exclaims in shock based on the state he finds him in. Sometime later, Russel furiously gobbles down some food. He tears a piece of hot dog with one hand while he eats a loaf of bread with the other. In front of him is a mountain of food, and he recalls that he used too much strength trying to calm down the crazed mana when he was trying to draw the 3rd circle. In a flashback to when the coach rider came back to check on him, the rider finds him unconscious and frantically tries to revive him, thinking he had died. In the present, Russel swallows a drink, and he's glad he's finally able to achieve the 3rd circle. He empties the cup in front of him and drops it on the table. He thinks about how awesome it is for him to achieve 3rd circle magic. The fact that he was able to overcome his limit from his past life just months after he returned to the past astounded him. He drops some coins to pay for the food and proceeds to leave. As he leaves, he tells himself that he'll have to go further than the 3rd circle. The system brings back the mission that's connected to the map and notifies him to find the location marked on the map. The screen notifies him that light will guide him once he takes the bold step to go near the area marked X. Russel checks the map again, and he realizes that he has to find the place on the map. But he doesn't know the landscape. While he's still thinking about how he can get directions, he overhears a tour guide inform some men that he'll take them on the best tour around Pompeo volcano. The tour guide screams loudly and explains that he's offering a special discount just for today. Shortly after, Russel joins the tour and follows the guide as he leads them to a rocky path. The tour guide tells them that Pompeii was originally a regular mountain that somehow turned into a volcano. The mountain suddenly turned into a volcano because a special creature started living in it. Their guide instantly mentions that there's only one creature with that description in the entire world. The creature is none other than the red dragon. Russel decides it may be a good idea if he starts to move alone from that point. Our boy crouches behind the other tourists and proceeds to leap off the cliff they're standing on. While the guide is still telling the other guys about the location, Russel jumps off the cliff. Our boy jumps on the nearby river and begins to walk on water. He says within himself that there may be a connection between this place and the reason he was sent back in time, his growth, his missions, and the rewards he's been receiving. As he follows the map up to a waterfall, he reasons that it could be that all that was to lead him to something. Our boy believes that everything he's gone through recently may have something to do with the dragon that once lived here. While he looks at the map, portions of light come out of it and float in front of him. The light mixes up and turns into something circular that looks like an eye. Suddenly the streak of light moves away from the map and starts to head somewhere. He suddenly recalls that this must be the light that he was told would guide him. The light moves over the river and makes its way through the waterfall. Russel smiles slyly and realizes that his mission is behind the waterfall. He quickly casts a wind spell. He shoots a wind arrow through the waterfall to give him a clear passage to go through. After that, our boy leaps right through the hole to avoid getting himself wet. Once he gets inside, he lands on a rock and finds out there is a lava cave right behind the waterfall. He remembers that the system warned him to wait till he achieved the 3rd circle to come here. But he notices that he can't see any monsters or beasts here, and wonders why the warning was issued. Our boy continues to make his way through the cave, cautious of every step. He runs into some pillars, which points to the fact that someone or some people had lived there a while back. He places his hands on one of the pillars, and he wonders how long it's been built. While he's checking it out, something catches his attention from the corner of his eye. He finally finds the light he was following stop in front of a strange door. Russel walks towards the door to investigate what's behind it. When he nears the door, his sense suddenly begins to tingle, and he feels as if something is wrong. He stops walking and wonders if he's suddenly forgotten the things he learned from his life as a mercenary. The thing is, in a situation where there are no monsters, beasts, or any sounds, there can only be one explanation. It means you've entered the territory of a strong predator. Suddenly, a huge lizard surfaces in front of Russel and looks down at him. Russel leaps backwards to avoid getting his head bitten off. When he's a few meters away from the creature, he looks at it again and realizes it's the Komodo lizard monster. He remembers from his days as a mercenary that it's a monster that can only be defeated with at least 2 teams of mercenaries. Our boy watches the monster advance towards him and decides that the only thing he can do now is to run, because there's no way he can kill it. He decides to slow it down by casting some lightning magic. Russel chooses the second circle magic called Lightning Arrow and starts to generate one. The Komodo lizard roars at him again as it gets close. Our boy doesn't give in to fear and aims the arrow at its face. He launches the arrow right at it, hoping he can land an attack and slow it down so he can get a chance to run away. The impact is so strong that it electrocutes the Komodo lizard and immobilizes it for a while. Russel is glad he's been able to stall with that move, so he decides to make a run for it. He heads straight to the stone gate where he had seen the light stop to get to the next part of this mission. As he gets inches away from the door, the 2 statues in front of the door block his passage with their staff and declare that he must prove he is worthy to enter with his mana. Russel is shocked by this and realizes they won't let him get off easy. The Komodo lizard soon reaches where he is, and it appears that it easily shook off the effects of the lightning strike. Russel looks behind him and notices he can't go this way or the other. He thinks on his feet and decides to do something erratic since his way is blocked. Turning around in rage, he tells himself he'll have to make his own path. He reaches out his hand and generates some fire that he directs toward the Komodo lizard. Suddenly the stone on the door scans the mana that Russel is emitting. The monster notices the response the stone has to Russel's mana and watches in shock. Instead of advancing, the Komodo lizard suddenly stops. Russel is just as surprised, and he wonders why the lizard has suddenly stopped in its tracks. The Komodo lizard monster bears itself up and almost stands upright, and Russel just watches in utter confusion. Suddenly, the guards blocking the gate retract their spears and stop blocking his way into the gate. The mysterious voice that spoke earlier tells him that he has proven himself. This means he can now enter. The crimson stone on the gate starts to shine brightly. The light becomes much brighter until it envelops the entire cave that Russel is standing in. Shortly after, our boy wakes up with a terrible headache in a totally different place. He quickly scans his environment and notices that things have changed. He touches the ground and notices it's made of ice. And he wonders how he's standing on ice when he was just standing in a cave just moments ago. It's unclear where he is, as all he can see is an ice cave and some ice statues as he looks around. He remembers that he was just in a cave a few moments ago and wonders if he was taken here through teleportation magic. While he's thinking, he notices another odd thing right behind him. Right up a nearby stair that's also made of ice is some mysterious magical horn that's held down by a series of chains. While he's thinking, a screen pops up again. The screen notifies him that he has a second mission, which is to defeat all the ice golems in the area and clear out the Trial of Fire. Some noise from behind him causes him to quickly turn back to investigate. He realizes the ice statues he saw were actually golems, and they've now come to life. He looks around him and realizes that he's surrounded by about several hefty ice golems, and wonders if they're really expecting him to defeat all these golems on his own. There's no time to waste, so he decides to get right to it, and starts to generate some fire magic in his palms. He curses and mentions that this mission is way too harsh, but it seems like there's nothing he can do. He generates another firebolt and fires at a nearby golem like a madman. The firebolt courses through the ice cave and heads right for the monster. The bolt hits the golem right in the chest, and it looks like it should do some pretty good damage since fire trumps ice. Russel recalls that in order to kill a golem, one has to crush the core inside of it. The golem he fired at looks completely unscathed. If it could talk, it seems like it's asking him if that's all he's got. The firebolt only managed to leave a crack on its chest. This looks like game over for Russel, and it seems he's going to be golem food. Russel winces when he sees this, and he wonders how cold the ice that it's made of is. He decides to try another approach if fire doesn't work, so he starts to create some wind magic in his palms. There seems to be an issue because the wind doesn't respond to him. Our boy notices this, and he's shocked. He wonders why his wind magic is suddenly not working. While he's still playing around, the golem rushes towards him and attempts to smash his brains into the ground. Russel responds quickly and decides to use some lightning instead. The lightning doesn't come up either, and Russel realizes he's cooked. The golem smashes into the spot he's standing. Luckily, Russel is able to move backwards before the hit lands. He drifts backward and stops when he reaches an ice wall. He thinks about the notification that came in earlier, trying to get some information as to why his magic isn't working all of a sudden. He remembers that the system mentioned something about clearing a trial of fire. Another golem comes to swat him like a bug, hoping to crush him into the wall, but our boy quickly moves backwards again. He suddenly realizes that he's not going to be able to use any magic here other than fire. Trying to avoid the monster, he trips over an ice rock. He gets pushed towards the wall and he ends up on a dead end. All the golems trap him in that dead end, and it looks like it's about to hit the fan. Russel groans from the terrible impact of hitting the wall. His head starts to bleed, and it looks like he also hit his head against the wall. With a deadly look in his eyes, our boy creates another firebolt and walks towards the golems. He finally stands up to the challenge. The golems stare at him in awe as his entire body is encircled with fire and mana. Russel fires 3 firebolts at the same time. The ice golem looks shocked by the sudden change in tactics, but it can't move out of the way because the arrows are pretty fast. The impact of all 3 bolts is quite explosive. The golem's core is exposed by the explosive bolts. Russel proceeds to take it down. He fires another bolt at its core and smashes the golem to pieces. Russel does the same to another golem standing nearby, and the method works. He starts to pant and he realizes he's only been able to take down 2 of them so far. At this rate, he'll probably run out of mana before he can take them all out. Our boy grimaces, and he decides to try something else. One of the golems tries to punch him into the ground, but our boy quickly runs back to re-strategize. He considers that to shatter their solid ice sheet at once, he needs to use something similar to how knights shatter iron shields with one strike. To do this, he has to focus all his power at a single point. In the end, he believes he needs to pack in more mass into each volume of his attacks. This isn't going to be a simple spell, so he decides to get further away to get time to cast such a complicated spell. When he creates some space between himself and the golems, he begins the spell. He starts by creating a fire arrow. He applies the formula for amplification on the arrow to make it larger and carry more weight. To make the bolts replicate, he adds the replication formula. It all works well, and several fire arrows emerge. Finally, there's something else he needs to do to make the attack really dense. He has to merge all the arrows into one, so one arrow carries the power of several at once. He has managed to replicate 5 fire arrows, and all that's left is for him to merge them together. Russel begins to apply the magical formula for compression. He merges all between his palms and starts to make them into one. Suddenly, one of the ice golems appears in front of him. The golem rushes at him with a full punch, and it looks like it's Russel that'll get merged to the ice-cold floor. He starts to scream and begs the arrow to quickly merge so he doesn't get killed. In the nick of time, he releases the merged arrow, and a great explosion occurs. The explosion is so grand that it stops the golems in their tracks. One of them gets a full-blown hole in his chest from the explosion where his core used to be. Russel moves away and lets the ice golem crash to the ground. He walks majestically with his newly crafted weapon, which he calls the Blaze Lance. Once again, his eyes transform into those of a dragon. The system gives him a notification that his understanding of fire elements has transcended beyond limits. Russel agrees with the notification and says he can feel it. He reasons that the power he's feeling is close to something from the 5th circle. He holds onto the spear and notices just maintaining the spear is a huge energy drain. To avoid wasting energy, he makes the first move. The golems rush towards him to let him know that they're not intimidated by his flashy new weapon. He launches his attack right from where he's standing and burns through the core of 3 of the golems and goes to the next and to the next. Russel counts that there's just 4 of them left, so he quickly proceeds to finish what he started. He breaks the core of one of them easily. He slices through the second one with his weapon, destroying the core also. Now there's just 2 of them left. While he's counting, one of the golems launches an overhead attack and attempts to hit him, but he easily moves out of the way. He jumps at the monster to take it down. He slices it in half for its insolence. After that one goes down, our boy starts to pant because he's running out of mana, but he can't rest till they're all down. The last golem decides to go long range, and it throws huge ice rocks at him. Luckily, Russel blocks the rocks, but some of them hit him, and he realizes he would instantly have been killed if he hadn't blocked it with his spear. At this point, he's left with 1 breath of mana, and his spear starts to dematerialize. Russel gets back up and maintains the spear. He tells himself that there's one last thing he can do if that's the case. He decides to throw the spear at the monster. This is the last blow, so it's critical. It'd be terrible if he missed. Russel finally throws the arrow when the monster gets close enough and hopes it reaches it. Finally, the arrow breaks through its ice shield and gets to its core. Russel just stands there after his throw and watches the arrow pierce through the monster. Our boy keeps watching, and he looks through the large gape in the monster's chest. When he realizes that he's taken them all out, he collapses to the ground. The system suddenly shows up again and notifies him that he has completed the mission and will receive the reward of 2 low-grade mana stones and 3 lowest-grade mana stones. He will also receive the unknown object. The unknown object is something called the Forgotten King's Horn. It turns out that the mysterious-looking object that Russel saw in chains is the Forgotten King's Horn. The horn becomes enveloped with fire. The screen pops up again and shows that this is the Forgotten King's Horn, and it has fire essence. The horn starts to release a great deal of light that fills up the entire ice cave. The light fills up the cave, but Russel isn't aware of it because he's passed out from exhaustion. The system displays that he'll need to enter the thoughts of the Forgotten King in order to receive his reward. Shortly after, Russel wakes up in an odd place. In this dimension, he's tied up by some chains, and he tries to recognize the place. The The screen pops up in front of him and tells him he's obtained the unknown object called the Forgotten King's Horn with fire essence. It also shows him that he has to enter the thought of the Forgotten King in order to receive his reward. When he looks around at his chains, he wonders what sort of reward this is because he feels like he's being tortured. Suddenly, the voice of the Forgotten King comes up. The voice of the Forgotten King continues and tells him that he's going to bestow upon him something called the King's Fragment. The horn appears where he is, covered with fire. The tip of the horn starts to come towards him, and Russel is shocked because it seems he's about to be impaled. Just like he thought, the horn pierces through him. He screams out in pain. And it's clear that the chains were put there to stop him from running away from this. The pointy end of the horn pierces through his flesh and enters into him. The horn releases a great deal of energy into him, and he looks like he's about to explode. He continues to scream at the top of his lungs due to the pain. The voice continues and tells him to use the power to do something, but Russel can't hear him anymore because of what he's going through. His body starts to burn up, and he seems to be overloaded with mana. Behind him, a large dragon that seems to be the Forgotten King appears. Moments later, Russel appears on the shore after the water carries him there. He suddenly wakes up and groans because everywhere seems to hurt. He wonders what's going on and tries to figure out where he is. It seems to him that he's still in Maldiva, because the style of building seems to point to that. He looks confused for a while, and it seems his memory starts to fail him. The system notifies him that he has consumed the Forgotten King's horn and has reached a limit. He's also told that the mana that was over his limit has been stored. The system also tells him that his intermediate understanding of flame attributes has reached its limit and has become an advanced understanding of flame attributes. Russel closes his palm and tries to activate his mana to confirm what he's been told. His body suddenly releases a great deal of mana, incomparable to what he's experienced before, which shocks him. Seeing how close he is to the fourth circle, he looks around him and wonders if this mana is really coming from him. Our boy remembers the treatment he got when he was in chains, but he smiles because the rewards are pretty worth it. He suddenly hears the voice of someone from behind him telling him it's nice to see him here. Behind him is the grand Miss Daria Snow White in regular clothing, whom he's shocked to see in Maldiva. She takes him to one of the bars by the beaches and mentions that she had sensed a sudden burst of mana. She says she came to check it out, and that was how she found him. Russel thanks her as he receives the drink she gives him. He smiles and says he didn't expect to see her in this place. Meanwhile, the master scans him with her eyes and realizes he's almost reached the fourth circle in such a short time. She also notices that his mana has become more pure in that time. As they continue their chat, Russel asks the Tower Master what brings her to Maldiva. She tells him that Maldiva is her hometown, but many people do not know. Russel is surprised to hear that, and he asks again to know if he heard properly. Miss Daria replies with an affirmation and says that's the reason she comes here every summer, because she's curious. She also decides to ask him what brings him to Maldiva. Russel hesitates before he answers, and he decides that it may be too early to tell her the truth. He finally finds a good enough excuse and he says that he came to see more of the world. The Tower Master smiles at him and affirms his statement, but she wonders whether to check the child's abilities. She decides to go ahead, so she asks him if he minds helping her out for a bit. And Russel seems confused by her question. Miss Daria flicks her finger and suddenly some magic happens. Some fire surrounds Russel's body and clothes him with a black cape. He recognizes the symbol on the cape as the Flame Tower's symbol and wonders why she gave it to him. The master tells him not to worry and informs him that the task she wants to give him is something he can handle. A screen suddenly pops up and notifies him his new mission is to pass Miss Daria Snow White's test. He is informed that he'll have to help her fight off human trafficking ship pirates at Maldiva Harbor to pass the test. The reward for completing the mission is an intermediate grade mana stone. The master mentions that she's sure that he's already aware that Endymion strictly forbids slavery. She explains that this is why they don't allow human trafficking ships to land at their harbor. Unfortunately, there are still some people who ignore their laws. She informs him that there are some guys trying to land their human trafficking ship near Maldiva, and she'd like him to help her deal with them. That evening, they both get on a boat and proceed to carry out the mission. Miss Daria informs him that she can do the mission on her own. The only issue is that the plan involves rescuing the victims as well as taking the ship. Russel catches on and tells her that means they need to pretend to launch an attack in order to distract the enemies and rescue the victims. The master commends his quick understanding. As they continue the journey, Russel thinks deeply. He considers the fact that 100 mages would come running, even barefoot, if the Flame Tower Master ever asks any of them for help. So if she's specifically asking him for help, it's not because she really needs him, but because she wants to test him. Soon enough, they reach the ship they're looking for. Before she gets off the boat, she tells him that what happens from now on might be too much for him. She explains that he has to deal with it because the path of a guardian is not always smooth and noble. Apparently, this is just another fate of mages. After she's done talking, she steps on the edge of the boat to go to the ship. She levitates to the side of the ship and tells him that she'll attract their attention and make it look like an attack, which will give him enough time to save the people they kidnapped. Russell just watches as the Flame Tower Master flies to the top of the ship, and he seems pretty tense. Mysteria flies upwards until she gets to a comfortable height above the ship. When she gets to a suitable height, she stops there and says this height should do it. She suddenly begins to activate her mana. The entire place fills up with a bright, blinding light, and she screams out to Russell to go help the people. When the pirates see the bright light, they become afraid that they're being attacked. They head to the deck and start to prepare a giant crossbow to fire at the Flame Tower Master. Several of the men arm themselves with smaller side crossbows, and they prepare to protect the ship. Their leader gives the signal and tells them to fire at the light that's over the ship. Dozens of arrows fly into the sky, aimed at the light over the ship. Mysteria just smiles from within the light at their pathetic attempts to attack her. One of the soldiers starts to curse when he realizes their arrows didn't reach the master. Mysteria creates a ball of lava in her hands and releases it towards the ship, causing it to split into several parts. Master Daria says she'd like to see if they're as skilled as they're bold. On the deck, the portions of lava drop onto the ship and start small fires around the ship. The pirates see the fires and are shocked. One of them tries to put it out by stomping on it, but it doesn't work. Eventually, a fiery hand comes out of the fire and grabs the guy's leg. They're not fire after all, but golems made of fire. The guy is extremely shocked as he struggles with the little creature holding onto his leg. All the portions of fire transform into little fiery dwarfs that seem to also be holding weapons made of fire. The men crowd around the golems, unsure of how to deal with them. These golems were specially created by Mysteria Stone White and are called dwarfs of burning wood. While the men cower in fear, one of them, who's pretty confident, walks towards the golems with his axe. Meanwhile, Russell climbs onto the ship. He manages to jump into the ship while the men are distracted. The confident man tells the others to move, because they're afraid of nothing. Russell watches as the man walks to one of the golems and attempts to deal with it. He watches as the man bears down his axe on the golem that's just watching him innocently. The cocky guy swings his axe and divides the golem in two. Moments later, the goblin starts to mend its body back, and it doesn't look too happy. Russell keeps watching, and he's amazed that he gets to see these creatures in person. The assaulted golem responds and changes its shape and starts to wrap around the man's legs. Soon after, the golem completely changes its shape and constricts around the man, setting him on fire. Russell is shocked by how quickly the golem is able to transform its body. Meanwhile, the other men watch their mate get burned to death in shock and horror. Russell snaps out of it, and decides this isn't the best time to be watching such things in amazement. He leaves the spot and makes his way down some stairs to get to the interior of the ship. Below deck, there's a large prison facility that probably houses the captives. The guy that's on guard duty notices the ruckus and wonders what's going on the deck. One of the prisoners blurts out that it seems the Navy has come to get them, and he rejoices that they're saved. Their guard hits their door with his weapon to scare them and stop them from talking. He tells them that it doesn't matter what happens, because none of them will ever escape from their grasp. And the men cower in fear. When they keep quiet, he asks if they heard what he said. Meanwhile, Russell lays a hand on the back of his neck. Our boy decides to knock him out, so he uses some lightning magic. A lightning bolt comes out of nowhere and hits the fat guy. One of the prisoners notices their unconscious guard and comes closer to ask if he has come to save them. He smiles at the man and tells him he has come to save them, but he informs him that it's safer for them to remain indoors until all the pirates are gone. The man falls to his knees and starts to thank God for answering his prayers. Russell looks around and wonders how many people are confined in this small area. While they're waiting, our guy sees something quite disturbing. He sees a little boy crouched in a cell, and is shocked that the heartless pirates are even selling kids as slaves. He becomes really angry and calls the pirates trash like bastards. Moments later, some of the other men come to the prison, and they spot Russell. The men quickly notice the unconscious body of their comrade that's lying on the ground. They realize that the ship has been invaded by the enemy, and one of them tells the others to get the bastard that invaded the ship. All three men bring out their swords and move towards Russell. Our boy, who was already angry that they would kidnap a child, tells them he'll be the one apprehending them, and he starts to create a chain out of lightning. He uses a second circle magic called chain lightning and throws the chain towards them. The chain bounces from one person to the next and electrocutes all three men on the spot. They're all electrocuted and become unconscious. One of them threatens that something bad will happen if their captain comes. But Russell doesn't let him finish his statement, and he electrocutes him with more lightning. Our boy continues by checking the other room in the prison facility. He runs into a dark cell and asks what the deal with the cell is. One of the people inside the cell asks him if he's a mage from the Flame Tower. Russell quickly creates a ball of light in his hands so he can see better into the dark cell. What he sees shocks him because he notices the cell contains several elves. The male elf asks him if he's a mage from the Flame Tower one more time. Russell realizes he must be asking him that because of the symbol on his cape. He informs the elf that he's not a member of the Flame Tower yet, but he's met with a rude response as the elf says that whatever he says is fine. The elf stands in front of the gate looking unimpressed and tells him to open the door already. Russell thinks to himself that he's obviously going to open the door, but he wonders why this guy is annoying. Even though elves are known to have huge egos, he takes a good look at the guy and wonders if he should just leave them there. Suddenly, another voice comes from within the cell and tells the first guy to stop. The female elf among them reminds the first guy to mind his manners. The other male elves are startled by her voice, and they call her Ilo. She tries to stand up, so they help her get up. Ilo informs the others that Russell isn't an ordinary human. She walks towards the gate and tells them that he possesses mana that's as pure as the light from a sunset. Apparently Russell is giving out a scent of spirits, so she smiles at him and tells him. The other elves are shocked by the statement that the mage isn't human. The mouthy one asks Ilo what she meant by that. Russell is equally shocked by her statement and wonders what she means by the scent of a spirit. The elves are left puzzled, and they wonder how a human can give off the scent of a spirit. Even Russell starts to sniff himself, and he tries to pick up the scent of the spirit that Ilo had mentioned. While he's trying to sniff himself, the mouthy elf calls out to him. The elf requests that Russell save them from there, and he even bows to him. All the elves in the prison follow suit, and the mouthy one begins to beg him. Russell becomes slightly uncomfortable as he watches them. He notices that all the elves, who are usually known for their big egos, were easily changed by one sentence from the female elf. He looks at her and wonders if she's a high elf.